Hey guys, all right, today we're going to talk about the beginning of the Cold War. So, the first thing I want you to do is look at these quotes. History repeats itself, first as tragedy, second as farce. So, tragedy means something sad, but second is something ridiculous. So, when we look at history, once you see a mistake, don't make the same mistake because we learn from it. That's one thing I want you to think about during this lesson. And the second quote was, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." So if you forget the past, then it will be repeated again. And that's another reason why it's important to learn about history. So I want you to think about those quotes as we move through this. This is 9.1, Power Shifts Following World War II. Okay, so first, near the end of World War II, the Big Three, which was Great Britain, the United States, and Soviet Union, joined together at the Yalta Conference to talk about what are we going to do after World War II is over. Germany's almost defeated. What do we do next? And so one thing they decided was that they're going to be splitting up Germany into different zones, which I'll talk about in a minute. The second thing that they decided was that they were going to defeat Japan together. And they didn't have the atomic bomb yet. So they were kind of thinking about maybe doing a full-scale land invasion on Japan. Okay, so this picture just blows me away. If you know anything about Stalin, you know that he was a bad dude. He was one of the worst people in history. He murdered millions upon millions of people. And just in this picture, casually, he's sitting next to FDR and Winston Churchill. And that's because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And Hitler was the enemy, and Stalin was the friend that they needed at the time. So after Germany was defeated, they divided it into zones. So you can see there's the British zone, the French zone, the U.S. zone, and the Soviet Union zone. I also want you to look at this white area right here. This is the city of Berlin. That was also divided into 4 zones, just like Germany was, and that's going to be important for later. But if you think about what Stalin wanted, he wanted Germany to suffer. He wanted Germany to be poor and weak, and the United States and the Allies, they wanted Germany to be a democracy and to be economically strong. Think about the Treaty of Versailles. What did that do to Germany? Is Stalin trying to repeat history here? Is Stalin trying to make the same mistakes that they made before? Clear as day. So definitely want you to think about that. All right. So there was a lot of tension because they wanted to do different things. Stalin had actually agreed at the Yalta Conference to give his people free elections. Does giving people free elections seem like a Stalin-y thing to do? Heck no. He also had taken over the land from Hitler during World War II. Does giving that land back to the people seem like a Stalin-y thing to do? Heck no. The difference in opinion on how they're going to move forward definitely caused a lot of tension between the West, Great Britain, France, the United States, and others, and the Soviet Union. So what happened was an imaginary line was drawn, an iron curtain, not a real iron curtain, an imaginary line. It was actually called an iron curtain because Winston Churchill gave a speech in the United States saying that basically Stalin had set up an iron curtain between himself and the West. And in this map, you can see the red is always communism. The red is on the right with Stalin, the Soviet Union, and the blue on the west is democracy and the Allied countries. All right. So here are 2 political cartoons I want you to look at. They both show an iron curtain. So the one on the left, it says no admittance. No, you're not allowed to come in. By order Joe. Who's Joe? Joseph Stalin, maybe. And on the other side of the curtain, you can see there's a Soviet flag. There's lots of pollution. It looks kind of crappy. And there's a sign that says towards Russia. You have this guy running away. This guy escaped from their side. And there's a soldier. I know it's kind of small, but there's a soldier pointing a gun down at him. These guys are looking on. So, and this guy down here is Winston Churchill lifting up the curtain, trying to see what's going on underneath there. All right. On the other one, it's a little bit different. There's similarities and differences, so I want you to look at the similarities and differences. But this one says, this guy at the top says, "Don't fence us in." And I think that means that he wants help from the Western countries. The curtain says "Made in Moscow," so it was made by. So Moscow is a city in the Soviet Union in Russia, and so it's part of the Soviet Union. These guys are trying to get out, but they're stuck. They need help. And this paper right here says "Plan for New World." So they're going on and planning the new world without care of what's going on the other side. These people want them to do more to help them. But that doing more would require going to war, perhaps a nuclear war with Joseph Stalin. All right, so the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is the arms race. And no, not this kind of arms race, but arms meaning weapons, and countries racing to see who could have more and better weapons. And namely, the two countries are the United States and the Soviet Union. And this is what the Cold War is really about. And so in 1952, the United States tests their first hydrogen bomb. Now, you might be thinking, but didn't they use an atomic bomb on Japan, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Well, they did use an atomic bomb, but it wasn't a hydrogen bomb. They're both nuclear weapons, but a hydrogen bomb is stronger. So the weapons are getting even stronger, and they're going to start mass producing them, which is scary because at one point they're going to have enough nuclear weapons to destroy the entire world. And 1 year later, because the Soviet Union had a spy in the Manhattan Project, the Soviet Union learned how to make nuclear weapons as well. And just 1 year later, they tested their first nuclear bomb. So this was the start of the arms race. One thing that's really interesting that I want to point out is that the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. And right about 1886, 1887 is when they had the most nuclear weapons. So perhaps the amount of time, money, and effort they spent on making weapons was part of their downfall. Okay, so lastly, I want to talk about what happened in Germany and Japan after World War II. So Germany was split into two sides. You have the Western Germany and Eastern Germany. So who controlled Eastern Germany? If you remember back to that map, think about it. Soviet Union. Soviet Union's in the East. Also in World War I, Eastern Front. So that's another way to think about it. And on the East Germany's economy suffered greatly. They were, the people suffered. And in the West Germany, there was an economic boom. And part of the reason that I want you to look at is that on the West, there was capitalism and democracy and freedom. And on the East, there was communism and no freedom. Look at this map over here. This is in 2018. This is 28 years after Germany became unified. Germany became all of Germany in 1990. But if you look at East Germany is still much more poor than Western Germany is. That has roots in the communist. I mean, think about it. From 1945 to 1990, 45 years, East Germany was a communist country. And now they're have a worse economy than Western Germany, even though they're all the same country now. Another thing I want to look at, which is a similar theme, is the economic wealth of these countries, United States, Great Britain, and Japan, just to compare them. So if you look at Japan, they were going up steadily, and they had a huge drop. What do you think that was from? End of World War II, atomic bombs, you named it. So Japan was bombed at the end of World War II, and it really hurt their economy. But as you can see from this graph, there's a massive shoot up, economic growth. And part of the reason for this was Japan became a democracy with a thing called collective capitalism, which you can look up if you want. But Japan is a capitalist country now, even today, and that has greatly benefited their economy. So the conclusion is that capitalism equals strong on economy, communism equals a weak economy.